Hey and welcome to Pristine Podcast. In today's video, we're going to talk about the top 10 reasons why podcasts fail. We're going to cover everything from commitment to personality traits all the way to audio editing. Reason number one is not committing enough. If you want to achieve something, you have to be committed enough to do it. You have to show up. There's two different ways people publish their episode. The first way is publishing them continuously, which means episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and so on. And then there's the seasons way, which people separate their episodes in different themes, which makes seasons. So, season 1 will go out and there will be a delay between 1 to 2 months before the season 2 comes. This delay now is very problematic because people lose their relevance. People start getting cold. Your audience is like expected to hear from you. There's nothing from you for 2 months if you're playing it dumb. Lots of people to prevent this from happening have their email list, which they use to send people emails to keep them in touch, to keep them warm, to say, there's sex many days before the next season launches. So they're expecting to hear from you soon. Or they convert their episodes, their seasons into courses which they can interact with, they can progress, and so on. So even if your breaks are planned and your people know about it, you can still lose relevance. Imagine if you start doing breaks for no reason just because you didn't feel like publishing an episode and so on. You would lose relevance, and it's not the way to grow your audience. Being committed does not just mean being committed to the idea of having a podcast, but also to all the work that goes into making all of it happen. Lots of people like the idea of having a podcast because it's cheap to start with. You don't need a huge initial investment. All you could need is a mic and a PC, and you would be in your basement recording. Nobody would know. But people also think that it's easy, and that's simply not true because it shares so many of its pre-production stages with other media formats such as video content. First you need to come up with the topics, and then you need to do the research, and then you need to prepare the script, the bullet points, you have to record it, you have to edit it, and so on. So it's out of a sudden can become very difficult. Your audience is made of people just like you with their daily lives, with events that can make routines. So your loyal fans will go as far as adjusting their routine so that when you publish your next episode, they will be there to listen to it. The thing is, if you're inconsistent, you'll disappoint your loyal core of fans, and that is a recipe for disaster. Your audience will never truly form and grow. Reason number 2 is that the content is boring. We've helped so many people create their podcasts from scratch, and one of our first exercises is for our clients to figure out who their ideal listener is, or their avatar. We find out about who their avatar is by asking simple questions like what is their name, gender, age, to more complicated ones like what is their purpose. When you plan your next episode, if your avatar is not in focus of your process, your episode is going to sound boring. There's something called the 30-second test. In the first 30 seconds, when people press play on their device, may there be on their phone or their computer or their laptop, they're going to be watching the player go and judge your episode whether it's worth listening to or not. And if they don't like it, they're just going to skip. They're going to close their tab or close their app, whatever, and they're going to stop listening to it. But if they like it, they're just going to lock their phone, put it in their pocket, keep on listening with their headphones. Same goes with the computer. They're just going to keep listening in the background. So the first 30 seconds are crucial, and not paying attention to make them very catchy, it's a big mistake. Most podcasts tend to follow a certain length. There's podcasts that are usually 1 hour long. There are podcasts that are usually 3 hours long. Whatever your length is, whatever their podcast length is, they usually keep it the same. So if you have 1 hour long episodes and you've got a very boring topic to talk about, you're going to end up putting as many filler words as possible, and then the episode is going to sound superficial, and you're going to end up pushing your listeners away. Speaking of superficial, if you don't go in depth of your topics, if you don't show your personal point of view, you're going to sound just like an average conversation, and nobody's going to deeply connect with what you're trying to say. If you're finding this information helpful and you want more podcasting tips in the future, then don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can get notified in the future whenever we upload a new video. Reason number 3 is impatience. Being impatient about your podcast growing straight away is not going to make it grow any faster. Like being obsessed with overnight success, expecting your podcast to become famous within like 4 weeks is going to get you disappointed when it doesn't. If you're comparing your curve of growth of your podcast to other people's podcasts who are way older and way earlier in the game, than you are. That's not fair to your actual progress. You're comparing somebody else's chapter 20th with your chapter 1. You have to be more realistic, and again, you're going to end up disappointing yourself if you're expecting the same amount of growth. Any of these beliefs, especially having a podcast is easy, is going to make sure that you fail right at the starting point. You should not have that mindset. You should make sure that you do the work and everything else will follow. Reason number 4 is inconsistency. Not sticking to the same format, but switching it every now and then will show inconsistency and unprofessionalism. Most podcasts tend to experiment at the early stages when they're still not sure what they're trying to do, but eventually they end up with the same format, which is, probably a spoken intro, a musical intro, the body of the podcast, the episode itself. There might be a paid advertisement in the middle, and then there's the outro and the spoken outro or something. And then they tend to stick to that. If you're changing it now and then, you'll make your existing audience that's been with you for like months to find your content unfamiliar. So that's not good for like growing and forming your own brand. Other than the podcast, you should have a way to keep in touch with your listeners, with messages, with comments and so on, and being irregular about the way that you keep in touch with people. It's okay to start simple in the beginning. You don't need the best quality mic, the best editing style, the best everything. You can start testing the waters first. If you see that you're getting some traction, you can get an audience from what you're talking about. Then you can start on improving your quality, your production, your equipment, so that you can have higher quality content. Staying the same will affect your numbers because there's people who expect a certain amount of quality, and if you're lacking on that front, you should definitely start investing. Reason number 5 is quality versus quantity. If you're ignoring the quality of your production but you're posting on time every single week, you will show to your audience that you appreciate quantity over quality, and that's not a very good thing. Putting out a show every week without diversifying it, without quality control, without anything, does not make it automatically a good episode. Reason number 6 is bad audio editing. When it comes to podcasts, some of them have video, some of them don't. Especially the ones that do not have video, you should be careful with your audio quality because it's the only thing that people are concentrating on. That's why if you don't have video in your podcast, your people are going to pay attention to your voice very, very carefully. And if you're making a lot of mistakes or or pauses, they're going to wonder like what is going on. They're going to check if their connection got disrupted, or they're going to be scared if you make like a sudden sound or anything. It's not the most professional and appealing form to upload a raw file to your listeners. Not including an intro and outro music will make your podcast sound a bit blank and boring because, it shows a certain amount of professionalism. It shows that you've invested some time into coming up with a quality, intro with music and an outro. And background noises are especially painful to deal with. We've had a client who had a very good podcast, but her studio was set next to the elevator, so you could hear the elevator going up and down. But, it wasn't that it was a regular background noise, like an AC, for example. It's a constant, humming noise. You can blank that out. You can edit that out, actually, because it's consistent. But the elevator coming up or going down like out of a sudden disrupts the flow or just gets them thinking about something else while they're listening, and it's not a very good thing. Reason number 7 is bad reviews. If instead of communicating with your audience, you're going in and spotting the negative comments and just deleting them out of your comment section, what you're doing is instead of improving your mistakes, you're just, having a nice facade of all nice comments and not actually improving what your audience is pointing out at you. Some of them may be just purely haters, but you'll see that there can be very valuable messages from them. Reason number 8 is that you do no marketing or promotion. There's people we've worked with who've hated social media, going out there and like being the loudest and like talking about their podcast and talking about this and that and that. The thing is that you should do as much noise as you can, because the people who are getting irritated, because those people who said like, oh, my audience doesn't like to hear more than twice a week from me. There's going to be people who are going to get irritated from you. That's fine. That's normal. But, they're going to leave themselves. Like, what can they do? If they don't like listening from you more, they can just mute you or just, stop being your follower. But there's so many people out there in the planet that have never heard of you. So, how can you grow if you're not being out there, going in front of so many people's eyes so that you can attract as many of them as possible? Reason number 9 is doing too much. If creating a podcast for you equals breaking any physical or mental limits, you should really consider hiring somebody else or multiple people to help out, especially if you're having like a normal 9 to 5 job that you have to then come back home and like pay more attention to the podcast. And if it doesn't fit in, if it's not possible, it's not going to work out. And finally, reason number 10 is that the result is poor. If you're deep in the game and you've uploaded so many episodes, but the slope, instead of going upwards, is going downwards, then instead of quitting, you should think to yourself, okay, what can I do better? Should I hire someone to do the editing for me that is a professional? Should I buy a new mic to improve the quality of the sound? Should I get a co-host? Like all the different things. But you should never quit, because that will make sure that you'll never succeed. If you want to grow your podcast faster and get more free time in your hands, then consider outsourcing podcast editing and post-production to me and my team. To learn more about that, click the link in the description and feel free to book a call.